Hello everybody. So, as promised, we're going to do a quick demo of the game to show you how it all works and how everything plays out. And you'll actually get to see a little bit in this demo some of the progression of the game. Because what you're seeing right now is the very first prototype board that we put together. It included 52 squares with 3 levels, green, red, and blue. Just really to get a feel for, does it work mathematically? And does it work with each of the bosses? So as we have the different bosses that are going to have different abilities and speeds, as you'll see later, we need to make sure that we weren't just creating something that didn't technically work. So we've done quite a few play tests, and after determining that the prototype board does actually work and the reception is quite good, we moved on to the artwork. So with that, we developed the current game board, which is a much more sleek, much more intuitive, and much more interesting design, frankly, where the players, instead of moving across squares, which is relatively boring, you're actually moving through the map, which is going to be a much more immersive feeling, and it'll get the characters and get the players more attached to the lore of the game, even though the lore is not exceptionally deep. Then again, based on the game style, we didn't expect it to be. So with this, just so our players don't get confused, and if you're wondering, well, where do I go, which spaces do I traverse? Well, you have the route map here that's in the box. This will be a box component. It'll also be published on the website, so you'll know and you won't get confused on where to travel. Another box component is going to be the instructions, and as you see, this white outline is not going to be existing. This is an Office Depot print. Don't recommend it. But ultimately, the game is very simple, and we've documented that in our instructions. On the inside, you're going to see optional plays, different things, expanded rules, and some FAQs if you do happen to get stuck, which I don't think you will. You'll also see imminent peril abilities. So on each of the imminent peril cards, they'll have an ability. This will outline what it does, what it means. But for just getting started, what you need to know is these 4 steps on the back. Well, 3 steps rather. You're going to sort and shuffle the deck. So right now you're going to see, when you receive the box, what you're going to get is a stack of 90 cards. They're all together, and you will need to sort them into 4 separate stacks. It's a pretty simple operation, nothing we're not accustomed to. And once you've done that, you then go on to select your character. We recommend this is done randomly, so you take a little bit of the cheating aspect out of it, but house rules might change that. So randomly select a character, and each player will randomly select. So each character will have their own unique ability. For instance, Jack here. We call him the Mule because he can carry additional packs, additional items. And he can actually take and give to each additional player as well once per round, which comes into play really handy when you have other cards, and as you start storing items, you're going to want to have some additional capacity. There's also a couple other characters. We'll introduce them on the Kickstarter page. Tripper's another good example of how the players are going to work together. In this game, you'll experience some trap cards, and those trap cards can really set you back. But his ability there is to steer players away or defuse traps and keep them out of trouble. And each character will play into the game very well. So the more players you have in the game, actually the more interesting it becomes, because the teams become much more dynamic and you have much more support. The next step is the imminent peril cards. Now again, all the designs you see right now are the first initial designs, actually probably rough draft number 50, but they all have been changed. You'll see that on the pages now. These are ready to print. We've got a couple of edits we're going to make, but ultimately the new print cards are ready to go. But I'll just take a look at one here. For instance, Thanatos. On the left you see the delay. In the middle, the speed, how fast they're going to move, and their abilities again noted back in the instructions. So let's just say we pull Orphnace, the Tainted Unicorn. So it's going to have 3 rounds of delay, but the speed is extremely quick with 6 and 1 dice. So it's going to guarantee to move 6 spaces, but that one outlier is that 1 additional dice roll. So that could be, of course, 1 to 6, so the speed can vary. But with 52 spaces on the board, you can imagine just the math on that. If you were to roll a 6, you're moving a quarter of the board, nearly. So the ability on this particular boss, and the unique thing about it is it does a sprint and then it slows on the 3rd round. So on the 3rd round it actually rests. And that makes for a unique play style, because you can sprint ahead in that 3rd round, try to regroup and catch back up before that sprint starts again. So we'll use that. So when we place that particular peril, noted before that the delay is 3 rounds. So here in the peril approach, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. You're going to move back 3 spaces. And for our players, they're going to start and players start. At the beginning of each round, this play is very simple. The player will pick up and draw from the discovery deck. The randomized card can either be a team event, a trap, a expendable gear card, or a character trait. They can either store that. Now this is a play instantly card, so it's a team event. And again, these are going to be gray in the new design. Traps will be red, character traits will be blue, and then expendable gear will be green. So it's going to be easy to determine what you pulled. Right now what you're seeing is it's difficult to tell, as this is a gear, this is a team event. They all look similar, we fixed that. So, with the gear, you can store up to 2 items and put that on your character. So we'll talk about how those items go through as opposed to really running through the game, because ultimately I'll just roll 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roll into the grid, and then the next character would play, pull that team event card, and what that means is you have an option to pull something out. So each of the different cards will have different effects and different things that you would do. So with these team events, you can choose to work as a team and make the entire team gamble with this particular card, or you can ignore it in the solo mode. Basically, you have an option to force everyone to take the gamble of falling back 1 or moving up 2. As we haven't gone anywhere, you might just take that gamble at this point in time because you play it immediately. But after you do that, you roll for your execution, getting some good rolls today, and you move along. After the 2 players have moved, the peril then moves into 1 space further. Once we've moved the 3 times for the delay, the boss is going to finally arrive at the start zone, which puts them into play. On that very next following round, once they've reached here, they then move. So the boss again will move at the space of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Granted, we haven't moved, so we're probably closer to here. And then roll an additional for the difference. So you can see how fast the bosses move. Some of these bosses. Other bosses are stuck to, say, 4 spaces, 5 spaces, and they move more slowly. So this creates a unique play because it's going to change the strategy, of course. If a boss is going to move consistently with a slow delay, maybe they start 1 round after, then they're going to move 4 each and every time. And there's not a lot you can do to stop that movement, except for a couple of cards in the deck which will slow those by 1 or 2 spaces here and there. However, for this previous card that we pulled, the unicorn, that second dice roll can be impacted by additional cards that you're going to find in the deck. You can force that boss to repeat the dice roll, for instance, or to reduce 2 from that particular effect. So there are ways that you can use that, and what you'll see with the younger players and novice players is they will use these cards. They'll pick up something like this and immediately say, hey, I rolled a 4, I'm just going to convert that to a 6 and add 2. But the strategy behind that is it's not a good move, because what you would end up doing is, if you were to, in this case, be able to slow down that boss, you would multiply that effect by the number of players. Say for instance, if everyone had this, the boss slows down, so everyone in effect moves up too. So there are other ways, but you can't always do that with certain bosses because they're immune to that. It's because it's specific to dice rolls. But as you roll through the game, there's quite a few cards that you can look into controlling and pulling that strategy into play. So the expendable gear cards use their store. You can use them on any character at any time. So as these, let's say for instance, one of the characters were here and we're overrun. You have an opportunity to use this card to fight back essentially and try to escape. So it's based on some luck components, but it's also still very interesting. And if you were successful, where the boss finally lands, you have an opportunity to move 2 spaces ahead. So that does make for some interesting playstyle to keep players back in the game, and it also keeps them from enacting vengeance on you. There's a couple other cards, Miraculous Rescue, and a few others that are related to survival and or slowing the imminent peril at the point when he overruns someone. So these cards are very handy. They're useful to keep on your character and use strategically. There are other cards that you're going to find throughout the game. Gear recycling, where you can go into that discard deck and pull something out if you're successful. That plus or minus moving the dice. And this is going to be something I'm going to speak to, because these cards are very valuable because you have more items that you can play on. Let's say for instance 2 individuals were holding these cards and you have a double or nothing gamble card, which means if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, you're going to double your next move. But if you roll a 4, 5, or 6, you're not going to move at all. Other players could support this. Let's say you roll a 2, let's say you roll a 6, you could reduce that down to a 3 with these 2 player support. That of course means your players are going to have to cooperate with you and give up those cards, but it's something that can be done. In addition to that, further complicating things or making them more interesting, and this is more for your new players. They're not probably going to get to this level of strategy, but it's something you do, and I'm trying to highlight that it's not a simple 1 level game. You could pull different strategies in. So let's say for instance you're holding this +2 and you say take the gamble on my character because I pulled at some point during the game, let's say for instance I pulled this character trait card out of the discovery deck, which means I could then use this card and give you half. So by in effect me giving you your +2, I move, let's say for instance you roll a 5. You're going to get a pretty good move for the next roll, and you split that difference with me. So there's different ways to really do that, and different incentives to get these character trait cards and keep them on your character, because they're going to add additional benefits to you during the play. Now that's the different mechanics during the play. But let's say instead this character was not able to fight back and got ran over. So as I'm moving up the board, this character is now out of play. So my player number 2 is out of the game temporarily, because he can't come back based on, again, I can bring him back at any point in time. I might want to wait. It depends on what's going on. And again, only if I have certain cards. So you have to store those and keep those as needed. But ultimately, if you don't, at the end of my round, let's say I play again, I move, I pull from the discovery deck, I get a card, I'm gonna, not the one I just pulled, fight back card, so I'm gonna put that on my character, just hold it because I'm gonna use it right now. And then I roll my move. Bad roll. But then now, the imminent peril is gonna move because there's no one else, there's no more active ally, it's just me. So again, that boss is moving 5 spaces plus 1 dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus the 1 dice. So we're going to move another 1. Now, this is where the other players never fall out of the game. And these cards are the Vengeance cards. They're not red anymore. They're now a deep orange, much like this color here. But they're still the same cards. They've just been changed in the design. So that individual is going to roll and pull one of these Vengeance cards out, which is an attack on all the existing allies. So this is an important and interesting concept to keep these players who would otherwise be in other games just sitting and waiting for other people to finish. This keeps them engaged, and let's say for instance I did something to not support this character during the course of play. Well, I'm probably going to be targeted during the rest of this game. So these different cards are going to slow me down, speed up the peril, stop us from being able to use special abilities, different things that can happen during the course of play, and different card impacts. The last component that we probably want to talk about is finishing it up. So that there's a couple ways that you're going to play this, but at the base game, without the expansions, the goal is pretty simple. Make it to the finish. So you're going to get across, come across the board, up and around, up over here, back over around here, and then through, and then once you've arrived here, you've completed the game. And the game continues until all the allies either have perished or have made it out. Once you're in here, now you are out of the game. You're observing. But you're not going to find too often, and we haven't found in the play testing, that a lot of players end up here 3 or 4 turns in advance. It rarely happens. So what the last thing there is that finishing up. Either you're consumed or you arrive. And that's really the end of the game. The mechanics are simple if you want them to be, but also very strategic if you are trying to play with a more advanced group. So it doesn't have to be a one-dimensional game. It can be an extremely interesting game with the right cards, and there's of course elements of luck when you have dice included. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them, and thanks for watching.